Recording is on.
Welcome to the governance discussion for November 4th, 2020. We were just talking about time zones and kind of aligning meeting times because, of course, daylight savings time has kind of thrown everyone off a little bit. And it sounds kind of like a funny problem, but it is kind of difficult to coordinate. Augusto was trying to hop in. I was hoping to give him a chance to say anything on that. But let's keep going, and if he gets in the chat, we can figure it out. So just governance 1.0 stuff. The community rep boost round 2, there hasn't, so we kind of talked about that last week. We're going to identify the people that would be willing to kind of do that, but we haven't kind of come to consensus on what the process was. So last time we had Sky and myself that submitted proposals, but we wanted to kind of reach out to those. So I don't know if we need any other signal to like tell someone that they should submit as, a rep request, or like whether they should just do that and like the signal is rep holders voting. I don't know if there's any thoughts on moving forward for the rep boost. Sky, since last time.
Yeah, so the last time, like as we talked about, like the giving, so like we do it for them was cool. And so this time we can actively reach out to them and have them do it, and then we'll see how that experience goes. And then the third time we'll know which one seemed better. But if we have a list, I guess we could reach out to them, make sure they know how to do it, have them maybe do a post on, walk them through it, maybe personally reach out to them. And then I agree that like the DAO voting on that is kind of the signal. So, or is the signal. We could have social consensus outside of that, I guess. Maybe in the forum post you said, like, say we're going to start doing this process, and then if anyone has any problems with this, write in the forum post, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think we have like the rough consensus on the 0.1% as like this round, and then the signal comes from rep holders themselves. So I do think, though, as you said, kind of documenting that process just to be like, well, this is what is happening, and then we can kind of course compare how those go.
Yeah.
Cool. And then next, treasury diversification. No big update here. There was just an interesting post from that, so I wanted to about allocating some to the DeFi tokens because they're underperforming. We still have a lot of other priorities to do that, but I just wanted to flag that and see if anyone had any other comments.
One question would be how immediate having some dollar-based crypto like DAI is, and because we could effectively use the dev multisig to do some, a month or two of like move it to the dev multisig, do a conversion, and then move it back into the DAO in small chunks, like $20,000 chunks or something. If we think that we want to have DAI, because there are some people that actually I think want to get paid DAI on their monthly basis probably. So the question is, do we want to do something immediate? Because waiting for a real layer and all that stuff, we don't need to do that. We can have some DAI in the DAO if we want.
I'm one of those that wants to get paid in DAI. I literally didn't do my worker proposal for the second payment because of the volatility. Like it went from 410 to 370 in like 2 days. I'm like, fuck that. I'm not gonna like 20%, 10% of my.
I made the silly decision to like when I wrote my DAO Talk post, I said that I would request compensation on a certain date. And so like I felt, obliged to follow that DAO Talk post, and ETH was at like 413 then. I'm just
nice.
like,
Nice. I mean,
No,
yeah.
413 is bad. That means I bought
It was 430 or
413.
Okay.
413. But Sky, I agree. I think the question is like, do we want to do that immediate? Or is the timeline on like
if
a
people
month or two?
if we wanted like 50K of DAI in there, because there's like at least, okay, if 5 people want to get paid, like, or if everyone wants to get DAI, then that's not going to work. But if there's literally a couple people that want DAI, like Zet, and he's not doing his proposal because of that, we can easily get 30 or 40 or 50K of DAI in there, like with like a multi-sig, not that hard.
Yeah, I'm just saying like maybe we could also get that using the relayer and maybe Gnosis protocol in like 6 or 8 weeks or something, right? And maybe, I don't know, discussing whether that's expediting.
Yeah. Because it's up to Zet.
I mean, for me, I'm not waiting for you to convert to DAI. I just want to know who wins if Trump wins or whatever wins, and I just want to see how the market. Like, I don't want to see a huge 20% dip there.
Yeah, but Zet, your big risk is now that we're at 380 or whatever, if you do your proposal and then over the course of the week it goes to 450.
I'm okay with that. I just don't want to like do my proposal and then it goes down. That's my
okay.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
We have a workaround we haven't been using for worker proposals, but with audit and with BlockRocket, like you could say if there's a giant move of more than 10%, you get like a little top up or something, but that would be more proposals and more complications. But that is possible because we do that with audit people and other people, outsourced people.
And at the minimum, it's like unnecessary stress or decision making, right? Like if you're thinking about when to submit your proposal, like that's not a valuable thing for like us to be doing to contributing to like the community and increasing the price of DXD.
You're already trying to pick off like low gas.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to like time ETH price.
And
that's a mess.
Someone said that like it cost you a lot to do the gen thing also. So I waited for the weekend to come for some of the proposal to pass. I remember it was something with gen to boost.
Yeah. Like Dev Violet's Milan's proposal, which John had staked part of, I staked on top of it. I still didn't stake enough and it failed. So then I staked more last night. But yeah, it's like 3,000 gen to like boost it basically. And you would probably be more than that. So maybe it is,
So it's a lot of like unnecessary stress. I guess just removing some of these would be nice.
Yeah, I think we need to start with a forum post kind of outlining this, because I think even the kind of other discussions on like treasury stuff, it's more of like diversification. Whereas now I think we have like real world experience just from like workers like talking about this experience. I'll write a forum post up about this, and then we can maybe talk about the solutions as they get there.
Didn't we talk about doing worker proposals on XDAI? Or did I?
Well, we'd have to fund.
Potentially.
I mean, it'd be tough because like the treasury. But
I don't know if we can. I mean, what happened with XDAI? Can we still use it?
No, we're not. We're not using the current deployed one because there are issues with it. So if anything, we're waiting for a new deployment. So it doesn't make sense to keep testing or using that one, and it's losing people's gen or locking people's gen up. So that is basically on hold. We're not using it at all.
Yeah. Also, there are big questions about which version of. We were talking with John about this, about which version are we going to use of our DXgov contracts in XDAI. Because one of the reasons that we were talking about using XDAI that you guys convinced me is about using it as a staging back, for example, environment to test our dApps and everything. But if the contracts that were deployed there are different to the ones that we are using on mainnet, that doesn't make sense. And now it doesn't even work. So we have to redeploy it again. So looks like the XDAI deployment was a very big fail in a nutshell, right?
Agree. I mean, yeah.
It was a failure, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really fair because Elon's not here to defend himself. But I do think we probably need to deploy ArcV1 on XDAI is my take from what I understand.
I mean, I appreciate a lot the effort that was put there, but if we are going to analyze it, like it was a failure because we spent time deploying to XDAI, using it there, pushing it to the community. I even distributed $150 that I still didn't request it among the rep holders. So we put a lot of time there, and now we cannot use it. So if you take that in account, it's a failure.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think this one's working out. But the good news is I think like the distributed XDAI and the people doing it, that's not a waste because once we deploy ArcV1, then I hope that should work. And we'll be there.
Yeah, the money is not lost, and we should redeploy it. We should learn from it. But
it actually failing has sparked the bigger conversation about when to use it. Like we were just going to use it without having thought that much about it. And now we're actually thinking what's a smarter plan, which is actually a good win, actually.
Yeah.
But thank you for that XDAI die. That was,
I gave
I got that. So
I gave half of mine away.
Yeah, don't thank me. I'm going to create. I just waiting for XDAI to be redeployed to create my refund proposal. I want my 150.
Well, that was my
He's
favorite
waiting for
part.
the price of DAI to go up. So
That was my favorite part because it's like you got so little, but then you were like, oh my goodness, I can do so much with it. And so
yes.
Anyway, so that is a kind of good update on XDAI as we kind of jump around. I don't know if there's anything else to say there, but to tie up the worker proposal thing, I don't think it can be done in XDAI. We need to kind of think of how we probably move towards another, not really XDAI, but back to the kind of dollar or removing volatility from worker proposals.
One other alternative to get DAI into DXgov, if we didn't want to take out ETH, turn it into DAI with a multi-sig, and then put it back in, is workers or people could say send 10,000 DAI to the DAO and then make a proposal to get ETH out. So it's like a safer for the DAO because if people wanted to put DAI in and get the ETH out, that's how the DAO could get DAI.
we can build the integration for Gnosis protocol. I think that's just a matter of prioritizing that. So I think if you make a post about what the intention is, that'll give some clear guidance to the technical team, like what we're trying to accomplish, and then I think we can do it relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think we get the ball rolling, and the ball kind of takes some time and kind of establishing what needs to.
Yeah, there's a few weeks of dev work and maybe an audit, depending on how we do it.
Oh, and then on worker proposals ideas, theoretically, if you have the multi-call, with numerous fields, you could make one big proposal to pay 10 people all same or different payments all as one proposal, and everyone votes on that one proposal. That'd be a way to make it more efficient monthly distribution. But I
don't like the idea of rolling all the proposals together. I think it's important that people individually validate what they're doing with the DAO, and that they can't
that's true,
hide behind other people. And I think if we could, there's a little bit of inefficiency in the number of proposals you have to do per worker, right? You do the initial one and the second one on the DXD. With the multi-call, I think you could maybe condense that, or I think there's some efficiency you could get and still have people individually getting approved kind of for their worker periods. Yeah, like we could lengthen it and just have one approval proposal, and then maybe all the payment proposals are rolled together like through a guild or XDI or whatever.
Yeah. I'm just kind of hearing these different discussions. I think it's clear that there are a bunch of other things on kind of compensation structure in general that we need to change and kind of upgrade. This hasn't even getting into the DXD locking component. And I think like Augusto has a good point about maybe we switch to 3 months. And so I don't think this is something we're going to be solving now, but we probably should be, probably not an update to the worker compensation guidelines, but maybe something that kind of gives some guidance in these general areas. But we need to, it'll also require building some stuff too. And so I think we should keep our expectations on like the medium term. The next, I wanted to just, the governance refunds round number one, not round 0. Nico made a post about it. So a refund contract has been deployed. And then there's a proposal to fund that contract. And once that proposal goes through, you can reclaim your refunds. Sky had made a walkthrough of how to do it for the last time. And you can get that there in the Nico's post. Cool. And then I was going to do proposal roundup, and also I wanted to talk about the time zones. But I guess in terms of the proposal roundup, a bunch of worker proposals that have kind of kept flowing in. Nothing too new there. And then there is the the proposal on changing the DXswap default fee. And I think that's about it. I don't know if there's any that anyone wanted to discuss or comment on.
I think Augusto brought this up in Keybase, but for the deployment, the initial deployment of DXswap, there's like the opportunity basically to deploy a few pairs with custom fees. Like we could set it to whatever to begin with, right? And instead of waiting for the governance, but I think it's limited due to gas constraints to about 3. If Augusto can correct me because he's the one actually doing this.
Yes, exactly. We agreed on 6 initial pairs, right, to be used. We can only deploy 3 initial pairs on the one transaction that deploys the DXswap factory and the other pairs. Like if we want to deploy 4 pairs, we are going to reach the gas limit is right now about 12 million GWay, something like that. Anyway, that's a lot. Yeah, we cannot deploy more than 3 initial pairs on the beginning, so we should prioritize which of these 6 pairs are the most important ones. At least decide internally, because we are going to agree on the DXswap deployed configuration once we send funds to the DXswap deployer. Once the DXgov through a proposal on the founding and voting power scheme sends, let's say, 1 Ether to a DXswap deployer, then the deployment is going to happen. So we kind of going to agree on the governance level about the pairs that are going to be created, but we should decide like in the community between us, which pairs are the most important ones.
And I guess with these few ones, we would probably want to like experiment with in the early days, or I mean, not experiment, but I guess like how we would be testing it live, or what should we be thinking about what these pairs should be?
I think another way to look at it is, are there any pairs which you want to have an initial fee that is not 0.25%?
Yes, that we have pairs that we agreed on a swap fee of 0.10, and now the default is going to be 0.25. And we have 6 pairs. That is DXG Ether, I think DXG DMG, DXG PNK, Ether DAI, Ether USDC, and Ether USDT. Those are the 6 pairs where we agree to have a 0.10% swap fee.
I think it's, even as a discussion on the 0.25%, I think it's also cool in a marketing way to have different fees, right? Because it's like, that's why DXSwap is kind of different. It's because there's a couple different fees, and then it also allows us to experiment a little bit and do different fees have any type of effect. I'm agnostic, I guess, on what those pairs would be, but maybe it would be cool to even do one pair with a lower fee than 0.25% and one fee with one pair with a higher fee, just as kind of an experiment. Obviously, then maybe the lower fee pair would need to be one where DXDAO was providing liquidity on.
Augusta, just to clarify, I think that the proposal to make the default 0.25 was also based around DXD ETH conversation, and I don't know if the 0.1% is. I think that old past proposal is kind of stale now. Am I correct, Chris? DXD ETH is what we kind of want at 0.25. That's why we had this new conversation, right? Based on Paul.
That was my interpretation.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's no bueno. That's no bueno at all, because till we don't decide the fee that we are going to have, we cannot deploy it. I mean, or we can deploy, but I don't know. It's kind of till we don't decide the fee that we want to have, we cannot make the deployment. And right now it's kind of like we have everything ready, and we are still deciding about fee numbers that can be changed. This is not immutable. The fees can be changed. So later we might, even if we fuck it up or we want to provide a better fee, a lower or a higher, we can change it.
Yeah, so I linked to the proposal, the one that's already been passed, that lists the 6 pairs for 0.1%. So I mean, if you look at this proposal, it's saying we wanted to sponsor these with these pool fees. It's going to take a little bit of figuring out before the DXDAO actually provides the liquidity too. And at some point, either around the same time or shortly thereafter, the DXDAO should be able to also change those fees. So I think it's okay that these don't start at the default. I don't think we need to deploy these with the 0.1% right away.
But in that scenario, there would be a 0.25% default fee that would be hard-coded forever. And then separate, there would be the DXD pools, or the pools you mentioned, that would start at a lower 0.1% and then could be adjusted.
So the 0.25%, the default fee is hard-coded. It will always be there forever. And what that means is anytime you create a new pair, it will start at that default fee, so 0.25, for example. But governance will be able to change that fee through a proposal.
But we would be launching these first pools with a different fee than a default fee.
The deployer contract has the control, same governance control, and could actually set the fees right from the start. Otherwise, we're just waiting a few weeks until we have the scheme in place to update the fees.
For 3 pairs, right? And Augusto wants to know which 3 pairs. And my understanding is DXD ETH, we want a 0.25 based on Pulp Machina and the full discussion. So maybe PNK and 3 of the
DMG.
other ones you could put at 0.1% to see what happens.
And it'd be interesting to put DMG at 0.1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Augusto just needs 3 that you want.
Anything we want higher?
Oh,
Why
yeah.
don't we? Guys, why are we having the DXG Ether with the default fee? I mean, that is going to be the pair that is going to be used the most. Hopefully,
you missed a couple of critical calls, Augusto, with a lot of
So can you summarize why?
Yeah, the basic idea is that initially our thinking was DXgov would provide liquidity from the treasury. So we thought, because we're going to use the treasury to make DXgov successful, and if we're going to do that, we'll make it cheap for the traders because it'll attract more traders. So that's why we initially thought 0.1%. Then we got pushback from the community saying we don't want the DXgov to compete with DXD liquidity providers using DXD from the treasury. And we said, okay, yeah, let's not do that right away. At least let's try to encourage the existing liquidity providers to come over. And along with that feedback, these liquidity providers also said they didn't want to have like too low of a fee because then it's less appealing to move over from Uniswap or Balancer. Yeah, to that link that.
Okay, that I mean, having that fee doesn't make sense if we want to use that pair as the base pair for everything. Like the highest priority base pair should have the lower fee possible because the more trades are going to go are going to go through it. So yeah, I mean we can do it, but it doesn't make too much sense. Even you can use the liquidity of how much liquidity that you want. But a lot of trades hopefully are going to go through that pair because we are going to encourage DXD and Ether being as base tokens. Therefore, this is the most important pair, and it should have the lowest fee possible. But what? I think
that's an important fact that we were
the base pairs.
The fee on base pair.
But I mean, the good news is it can be changed later, right? So I mean, that's a good argument, and I think maybe that argument does win, like soon in the near term. But I think because of this feedback we got about, existing liquidity providers not liking it, the 0.1%, I think it's a good idea to start with the 0.25, so we can see if we can move them over, and then you can kind of once we see what kind of liquidity and who's doing it, then we can decide. Okay, should this be lower because it's a base pair and we're getting more volume? I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah, a lot of arbitration hopefully is going to happen through this pair. So the lower the swap fee, the more fees that we are going to collect. So we should find the right number. Anyways, it's good that we have the default pair and we lower it later. Because that is going to be the highest fee that we are going to have, hopefully there.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be very long before we can lower it. Because I mean, we just have to have the scheme installed and then we can make proposals. So that would be cool too, right? If you could we make some argument for why it should be lower and then try to get feedback from the community. This is the kind of thing too I would love to see, like a DXD guild also vote on this, because then we could see the DXD holders like this idea or do they not like this idea.
Yeah, and so Augusto, do we answer your question or
no? Yeah.
Default.
I mean, I need to know the most important pairs, just this, and that we are going to use with different fee is going to be DXD PNK, DXD DMG, and the stable coins are going to have the default fee or a lower one. Those also should have a lower fee. Basically, all tokens that are going to be used as base pairs or are going to be the most popular to be used as base tokens or base pair should have a lower fee against Ether. Because this is going to allow a lot of bridging between different pairs. So you want to have a lower fee there, or a lower fee to just a direct exchange.
Also,
compete with that.
the PNK DXD and DMG DXD, how much are we providing liquidity there? Because then that's the same issue as DXD ETH, right?
Exactly, yeah, that's the same. Like, it's the same issue that you are going to have with the DXD Ether pool. We are going to be, the plan is to provide liquidity using DXD from the treasury on those pools too. So suddenly we are not doing that either.
I'm not too worried about it because I think by the time there's significant liquidity or we're adding liquidity from the treasury, we should have the ability to change the fees, right? And then, so while we're doing it, we could set it lower, right? Like, so if we miss one now, it's not, I don't think it's the end of the world. It's more like, here's an opportunity to pick 3 that we could set differently, right? And so which 3 should we do differently, if any at all? And so I think, Augusto, you're saying we should do a base pair low fee, like
yeah, the base pairs
or something. You want to do ETH DAI?
ETH DAI, USDC, USDT, maybe we can use 0.15% or something like that.
Yeah.
At least on those 3 stablecoin pairs. And we can provide liquidity there using the treasury, using the Ether treasury.
I mean, if we have the opportunity to do 3 pairs, then maybe it does make sense to just experiment, like do one low, do a couple low and one high or something, and see how it works out.
Yeah, I wouldn't experiment with this. Like, you can.
So if you could pick 3, Augusto, what would you pick?
The stablecoins, like seeing that now DXD using DXD is such a problem. Ether stablecoins, Ether DAI, USDC, USDT.
Okay, yeah, let's do that then. I'm down with that if other people are.
Yeah.
Where are we getting the DAI, USDC, and USDT from?
Good question.
We don't have it in the treasury, and we don't have the ability.
Yeah.
We have some DAI, 500 DAI.
What about? Can we use Mesa for this? No, we don't have the Mesa integration either. Neither. So
we can add, like, next thing we should do is the Mesa integration, and I think we could do that in a couple weeks. So.
Maybe we can create a smart contract relayer where you send Ether and is exchanged to DAI, or any like a swap relayer for DAI using Uniswap. So you send Ether to this smart contract from the DXgov on the receive function, and it's going to do all the swap, and it's going to send the DAI to the DXgov. We already have kind of these scripts that run some receive functions. So eventually, this allows you send Ether to a smart contract, and it's going to run some operations. And in this case, it's going to exchange to that and send the DAI back to the DXgov. We will need 3 swap relayers, 1 for each stablecoin.
I think it makes sense to prioritize, like, because between the worker compensation and providing liquidity, we should get some stablecoins. So I think we can do that next. And Nico knows the most about this stuff.
Yeah. Also, we don't have to worry about I don't know. We should worry about because these pools in Uniswap, they have a lot of liquidity. So even if we want to do a swap of, I don't know, 20K, we are not going to be front run, right?
No. I mean, you could do it.
No.
I mean, you'll be like front run like a little bit, but that's not. It's more like efficiency gain, like gains like there. But there wouldn't be any price slippage
because the liquidity is super high. So
yeah, I mean, with doing an ETH to DAI, I mean, you could do a couple $100K and barely move it.
Okay, awesome.
What?
That's on Uniswap. This would be separate from Mesa. We'd have to talk about that. But just to try to close this, so if we want to do stablecoin pairs, we can't get stablecoins in treasury for a couple weeks. Is it okay to have those be base pairs if that means it'll be even if there'll be a couple weeks until the Treasury can get stable coins.
Yeah, I don't think it should affect what we make up base pair.
Cool. So
if there's no liquidity and it's a base pair, that doesn't, I mean, it's still a bad user experience either way, but the fact that it's a base pair doesn't change really, it's not going to break it. The fact that you have the USDC listed as a base pair. It's just a bad user experience because they can't get, if there's no liquidity for USDC, then I would say we should be prepared for DXswap is not going to be a great user experience early on because there's not going to be a lot of liquidity in some things, right? And personally, I think the answer to that is pulling in the Uniswap liquidity through the router, and I think that's on the roadmap. I think we can do relatively soon.
Yeah, actually, it depends. Like, I think the custom base pairs feature that we might have, that's something super cool that will also, we are going to bring a lot of liquidity because if we are going to use stable coins as base tokens, the stablecoins Ether pair are going to have a lower fee than Uniswap. We are going to eventually have like better pair connections between stablecoins than Uniswap. I mean, more profitable for traders. So hopefully more trades are going to happen there through aggregation because our price is going to be better.
So to try to close this, what three are people fine with just doing the stable coins then at low for start? Like, I mean, basically, Gustav, I'm not too worried about it. I think the bigger thing is getting the connections up and running and getting liquidity in and stuff. And I think if you want to do the stable coins to start, that's fine by me.
Awesome.
Good. Cool. Glad we talked about that because it is an important thing. So I feel like we came. But moving on just to 1.x stuff. We kind of talked about XDAI earlier in terms of kind of where we're at. I think there still needs to be some more movement there. I don't know if there's any other conversation that we wanted to pick up from there.
So for XDAI, I think the big thing here is redeploying. One, just like confirming that the path forward is to use ArcV1 on XDAI, which is what my sense of things are after talking with Ezra I guess that was last week, and then figuring out how to actually do that deployment. And then we just got to get whatever is, if there's anything left in the ArcV2 XDAI DAO, just close that out.
Cool. And then just moving on, DXD Guild, just wasn't sure if there was any update there or anything that we should be thinking about there.
There is not because I'm the only person working there. And I've been busy with DXgov. But I'm going to be working on that in my next 2 months once I get free from my responsibilities on DXgov.
Cool. All right, and then just wanted to kind of spend either the rest of the time talking about 2 different topics. First is just governance 2.0, and the second is time zones to tee it up a little bit. So first with governance 2.0, we had a good kickoff call yesterday with a lot of different people from kind of frequent contributors, a lot of people on this call, also teams from DAOstack and Delphi Digital, and then a couple kind of outside perspectives. Kind of try to narrow the problem and get everyone on this on the same page in terms of the misalignment of rep and DXD long term. There's some shared in the agenda. I shared the Notion board and the meeting notes from that, and kind of the next steps process here are trying to really. It seems to be that there will be some kind of like maybe technical equation solution, however you want to kind of call it. But what we're trying to do now is kind of like list what are the requirements that that would need to adhere to, and then kind of lay those out there. So we've got a document that started that's in the Notion board for that. Several people on the call that were here, I don't know if people wanted to comment or add any color.
Yeah, I think the goal for by the next meeting would be to have the requirements kind of clarified, I guess. What I'm hoping for on that is that we can retain reputation and DXD kind of as primitives. Like in isolation, reputation can represent an individual's contributions to the DAO. I think that's like a very powerful concept that could be extended even beyond DXDAO if that's like kept intact. And then on the other side, if DXD can represent your financial stake, I think that's also powerful because you can basically then support speculators who just want to hold DXD and nothing else, or workers who just want to work and earn some credibility and nothing else. And then if voting power is like a third concept that kind of draws on those two and uses some kind of an equation to calculate the voting power.
I just want to say that something that would allow this is like very much what I have in mind for the future of the reputation system.
If you say Nectar DAO, I'm gonna be upset.
If I say what? Sorry.
If you say Nectar DAO.
No. That's not at all actually what it is. I mean that's a hack directly from a token to reputation. That's quite different than something that a third thing that actually looks at both as a source is more like what we're talking about here. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like looking at voting power with a new denominator, right? Whereas like now, ultimate voting power is basically the same thing as reputation.
Right. And so you can make things that give people reputation for other things, but then you're messing with the idea of reputation quite a lot.
Right.
You know, what I'm talking about is actually sort of a generic interface that says, hey, you can use something that says basically, hey, you can use anything for your for your voting power contract. We just need to be able to check balance of ad or something like that. And then you can write we can write some contracts there that let you basically this could even be up to the DAO. Like you could name other sources. Like you could have a contract that says, give me any number of contracts that fit that and weights, and then you could say, well, here's our reputation contract. We're going to use that for 75% of the weight. And here's this DXD locking contract. We're going to use that for 25%. And you could adjust that later. And you could add a third source. You could take it away, whatever. Something more like that is kind of what I'm imagining. This isn't really spec'd out yet, but I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about this and seeing if we can figure out something cool, because I do think there's a pretty cool system that could be built there.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a platform perspective, I think like if I was in DAOstack shoes, I would think that it would be cool to allow like flexible design, right? Because the design space is potentially big. Like DXDAO is going to figure out something, right, that we're going to settle on, but there could be a whole range of ways to do it or things to draw on that could kind of follow a similar framework, but like be a lot different, right?
Yeah, that's I'm totally on board with that. That's definitely what I have in mind, is something that would let you experiment more with this and let us have, whatever you guys end up with, other DAOs could use that, but they could also make their variations of it. I think that this area, like understanding voting power, is just something that totally hasn't been figured out yet. And so a system that does let you experiment and adjust things seems like the right way to go to me.
Yeah,
Obviously,
it's like some type of
a big deal to make changes to something like that for a big existing DAO like you guys, but still you have the need to try things there, even though you can't, you don't want to go crazy with it. But
yeah, it's like what's the reconciliation process? And you can imagine that each DAO might have a different approach, but I think DXDAO will like come up with some reconciliation process to probably produce voting power. Is that like modular enough for other DAOs to kind of find their own reconciliation between the two primitives?
Anyway, I don't want to derail the conversation. I think this is something that is definitely worth talking about. And we'll talk about it more later, I think. Unless people want to keep talking about it now, which I'm open to, but I know it wasn't really on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, like it should be on the agenda, like if you ask me, considering what I saw yesterday during the call was that there is a sufficient amount of clarity regarding the problem, and the path to the solution is definitely not easy. So, like, if we are going to be creative, we should allocate some time to discuss about possible solutions, especially the more technical people, and to give them enough space and freedom to make quote unquote errors and mistakes so that we can come up with something that's going to be effective.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Cool. Then we have a couple minutes at the end. I do want to talk about the hot topic of the now, which is time zones. And so this call was scheduled for 16.
Oh, I thought we were supposed to talk about that in an hour.
It is like kind of
what the problem is.
It is kind of interesting just to kind of lay the problem out, because like you know, we have listeners at home, and this is important. The question is like, who defines time, right? Because like some people are switching and abide by daylight savings time, right? Where other people are like, well, UTC time is this like this, I don't want to say immutable, but like consistent thing that never kind of changes. So the question is, what is DXgov time?
Yeah, so I think that the main issue is, because we want to find something that works for everyone, but the main issue is there's a thing called middle region syndrome. It's like middle child syndrome. If you're in the middle of like two extremes, it doesn't, like, these things don't matter to you. But for Ezra and everyone in Israel and the Ukraine, you're pushing up at one edge, and then if you're West Coast US, you're pushing the other edge. So if we could say like UTC 4 p.m. always, forever, all year long, that works for people in the West Coast in the US, but that's going to be sucky for everyone in Israel and Ukraine, right? Oh, sorry, Elon. I meant like Elon and Matan. Sorry, not Ezra. Sorry.
So I think there's two issues, right? One is, what is the reference time for the DAO in which we pick all times from, and compare it to. And second is like, when are we scheduling things? So there's like two. I think the first thing we should figure out is what time is it right now? And then we can figure out a schedule.
UTC time is the best reference.
Yeah, I think
also, so. Yeah, guys, just to be clear, we should find the time in UTC and use that, because I think we cannot be like, oh, now we have 1 more hour in Europe, or 1 more hour, or 1 less hour in US, and one, like there are places where time like never changes. For example, here in South America, we don't change, we don't shift the hour, right? We use the same hour all year long. So
I mean, but the question is like, which one is better?
Yeah, exactly. But it shouldn't be affecting the change of regions. Shouldn't be affecting our work as a international organization, right? We should choose one frame and use it.
I think the most important thing is something that is convenient and useful to all participants. I think changing time is like difficult, but I don't think there's anything that is like emotionally like or morally wrong with like switching time. That's like something to do. I think the concern for me is I think the West Coast of the U.S., specifically San Francisco, is an extremely important market for us and for kind of any technology company. And I think there's a huge difference between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. there in terms of getting people involved, not just on this call, but the weekly call. So I think it'd be important to work around the West Coast of the U.S. And I think that means
Los Angeles and Vancouver is what you meant to say, right?
No, all three of those.
Seattle.
No, but the key is this. So today, the current time of 4 p.m., this call was at 4 p.m. UTC. That would work for like Vancouver, San Francisco, LA, and that currently works for like the other extreme, Ukraine and Tel Aviv, for example. But the problem is if we keep it 4 p.m. UTC all year long, for half of the year, that's okay because that's a little later for U.S. West Coast in local time. But then it's really late for the other edge. So that's why once a year you switch. That's why people do this switch, is because we're keeping it in the middle, so it's not extreme for either one. This is like the only perfect time that works. But then you have to switch the UTC twice a year. Otherwise, you could.
It's not super late, even for like the difference. I think the difference is more in the morning than the evening for.
So are we agreed that we're going to use UTC time? That's clear, right?
UTC is the best reference time.
Yeah. Okay. UTC is the reference. Then the question is, when are we going to do the meeting?
Can you change it once a year or not?
No, we should not change.
I'm not settled on whether we should not change it yet. I don't see a
change it once a year.
Yeah, I mean the whole U.S. like the entire U.S. country does it. The economy does it. Governments do it. It's not that hard to switch once, like switch hours. I haven't heard a good argument for why that's like something we shouldn't philosophically do.
All of Europe does it too.
We have a bigger problem, I think, which is like, we can talk about, West Coast is important in the US, but like there's entire like swaths of the world that we are not even remotely accommodating, that actually where the bulk of the population of the world is. So I mean, like in terms of scheduling calls, I think we need to address the East a little better, like Australians and in the
I think that
China,
is
Japan
related and maybe even like bigger issue that we could like need to address besides just like picking a time.
So the goal of this regular call.
Also, guys, I think it is not bad if we agree that, okay, the time might change twice a year, but it should be communicated, right? Because right now, what happened, it was a mess, right? Because it was like, I will have the call now or in an hour. So now we should decide, like, okay, we are going to use UTC 4 p.m. and maybe we should know before that, okay, the time is going to change, the hour is going to change 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we are going to use UTC, 3 p.m. because I know.
Yeah. So
I think we need a forum post and maybe a proposal to get some signal on
this. You
can
pick those two times today. The issue is there's a 1 week mismatch between when Europe and when the US switched the time. So for 1 week, it was messy.
Those sound like provincial problems that we don't need to worry about. To me,
that week is vacation for everyone. That week is no work. Like just we
just pick a UTC time. Europe and US will figure out. Everybody will know their local time. We don't have to worry about that, I think.
The good news is we can punt this problem now. If we decided something now, we can punt this problem for 6 months because we know the time isn't going to change at least until then.
Yeah, so for the best time for people in the US and also for the edge of Europe, currently it's 4 p.m. UTC time. Starting for the next 6 months, 4 p.m. UTC time is best for both edges, basically.
Yep. Yeah, and if we're going to change it, we should know it. Like, and when that week comes, like we should be ready.
I can tell you when that week is, but there's still going to be a mismatch.
Sky, I will tell you, my this is really important. My grandfather died a couple of years ago, but for the last like 20 years of his life, he'd always send emails to everyone, like happy birthday emails to people, like everyone in the family. And then he would always send an email the day before daylight savings time to be like, remember to turn back your clocks. And, phones and the internet have now like replaced that. So we don't need to actually turn back our clocks. But what we now need is someone to go out of their way to make sure and remind us that we're doing it because it has effects. And I think, Sky, you can be the town crier for daylight savings time.
Sky
Yeah,
could be Chris's new grandfather. So.
or we can use the Google Calendar, but it has to be referenced in UTC time.
The UTC time is good. I like that too. But the consensus, I guess, we need to get to here today is tomorrow. What time is the weekly call in UTC time?
Regular call is 4 p.m. UTC time for the next 6 months.
Well, Sky, we're not gonna. If we're gonna agree on UTC time, I think we should also agree on the 24-hour clock, and so that's 1600 UTC time tomorrow.
Oh.
So the calendar is right. Is that right? The calendar should be.
Yeah,
right.
the calendar is right.
Calendar is not right for the next year. It's right for the next 5.5 months.
That's perfect.
I legit when I did
Because the
Did
calendar is not is like a little fucked up, but anyway.
I did
It will be awesome. It will be awesome to have a proposal for this, anyways. Just to.
I think so too.
Yeah.
For some signal.
All the people who aren't on the call right now are probably going to vote us down because.
Oh man, Chuck Norris is going to vote there for sure. If
I definitely, when I was setting the agenda, just Googled.
I'm thinking
the
about
time
making
for
a
all of these.
proposal to solve this issue in a different way, and that is to move everybody to South Africa where the time doesn't change.
Well,
man,
I was saying,
in Argentina doesn't change either. You can all guys come here.
so
We're kind of
as I was saying before the call, China, the entire country, is on one time zone, and it like covers what you should think should be like 3 time zones. So like the western part of the country, like Tibet and elsewhere, they just like the sun just gets up really, really late and people adjust. And there are crazy people in the world who think that we should get rid of time zones altogether and everyone should just adjust to like each other's like working hours. So then we wouldn't have these coordination emails issues. But we can't really agree on anything right now.
Flat Earth people, I guess.
One time zone.
I mean, but the fact that we're addressing and solving time zones, I think is, we can scale that type of coordination and consensus around it to things on a much more global level.
And
First time zone is next climate change.
And then to address Asia, which the only time that I know that really works with a Western combined with Asia is like later in the day, like end of day West Coast, right? Would be morning for Asia. So there could be a call once every couple weeks or something that is at that time for you'd want to probably include as much of the US as possible plus Asia.
So as someone, I used to live in Asian time zones and I used to love watching American sports. And so like the West Coast sports are actually like the best ones because you get 7 p.m. in LA is 11 a.m. in like Hong Kong and Asia. So that's actually kind of an easy way to do. You can even do like 5 p.m. LA time is 9 a.m. in Asia. Of course, it's Asia. The difference between Asia and the U.S. time difference switches every 6 months too. So you have to go from adjusting by like 12 to 13 for the East Coast, or from 15 hours to 16 hours for the West Coast. And then when you like get to 16 hours ahead, really you're like 8 out. You're like 1 day ahead, 8 hours behind. So it's easier to do the math through subtraction. But like I said, I just Google all the time zones. I keep thinking the recording is going to come in and say that it's over here, but I think we've finished this.
I'm going to drop off. See you guys.
Because I'm curious how this will scale.
All right, cool. All right, see you guys.